This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. All right, so it's time for the bold predictions video. But before that, there is some injury update stuff that I want to get out the way for the Cleveland Browns, because there are some injuries to deal with. We're going to see what these turn into, what these don't as things go forward. So Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward didn't practice today. I literally wouldn't be surprised that they just practice one day tomorrow and then they play for the game. It does not seem like anything is stopping Myles Garrett from attempting to give it a go on Sunday. I think he's going to suit up and play. We'll see how it goes versus the Rams, but he's going to suit up and play. No word if there's going to be a snap count for him or anything like that, or if this is anything where they want to give it a snap count. This might be throw a brace on it and let's go, or it might be let's give him 20 snaps or something like that. So we'll see when the game happens. Same thing for Denzel Ward. DTR did not practice after concussion testing today. I'll tell you right now, probably a 80% chance now that Joe Flacco is going to start in that game. I talked about this before. I don't think that really changes the game plan. And I do continue to find myself like in this position of explaining this. The offense isn't going to have to transition that much with Joe Flacco, and that's part of the reason you bring in Joe Flacco. I understand that Joe Flacco and DTR are not the same caliber of athlete. DTR is a significantly better athlete. But when it comes to how these quarterbacks play in the pocket, they're very similar more than they're not, right? Both are predicated on being on time, throwing balls, working short to late in the middle of the field. They both kind of have similar games within the pocket. So I expect there to be not that much of a change offensively, because ultimately DTR, Joe Flacco are similar, except for you're just not going to run Joe Flacco on RPOs, right? Like you're just not going to have design runs. So it's like maybe 2 or 3 plays that you take out the playbook, but everything else stays the same there. And then maybe there's some more complicated passing concepts that you can throw in there to make up for it, because Joe Flacco is a veteran, right? He's been in the league for a while. And here's what I'll say with Joe Flacco, because I know that people are finding themselves into camps and for whatever reason getting into a DTR versus Joe Flacco war. Let me tell you, it's pointless. It's useless. Stop that. It's dumb. But the thing with Joe Flacco is if he only has to play a game or two, I think he'll be good. The issue with Joe Flacco isn't that he can't play well for a game, and the issue with him being 38 isn't that he can't play well for a game. It's if he can play well if he has to play 8 games in a row. Right? Like how well can his body hold up on the week-to-week grind at age 38? That's the concern with older players. And I think that's an angle that gets missed a lot when we're talking about older players, because they'll have a good game and we'll be like, oh, see, age ain't nothing but a number, this and that. But it's about the consistency week to week, week in, week out in a physical sport like football. And you even saw this with Tom Brady. Once he got up there in age, he wasn't able to give you the same amount of good Tom Brady games that he was capable of at 42 that he was at 35. You know what I mean? And that's a outlier of outliers when we're talking about Tom Brady. Joe Flacco, definitely not Tom Brady. So yeah, I think he'll be good this week. If he has to play another week, I think he'll be fine there. But that week-to-week grind, we saw this with Phillip Rivers, where Phillip Rivers was in there, and the first few weeks he was fine for the Colts, but then it got longer and longer into that stay of him playing quarterback, and then by week 12 you're like, oh my goodness, he can't play anymore, like he's just bad. It's the week-to-week grind that takes a toll on the body, not necessarily a player's ability to play one game. That's why I think Joe Flacco is more suited to be this role, right? A backup. Even if he plays well, I think it's better for the team and him to go back to that backup position, not because he can't play, but because he just has a limited amount of games left in him at 38, especially when it comes to back-to-back games. He's somebody you want to have available and have as a really good option once he's out every once in a while instead of relying on them as your starter. And I think he'll be able to do that for you. But let's jump into some of these bold predictions this week. I think there are three main things, and I think the game plan is very simple on both sides of the ball for the Browns, defensively and offensively. My first thing is turnovers. I do believe this is a week where you'll be able to get multiple turnovers. Matt Stafford is no stranger to turning the ball over. The Rams are no stranger to turning the ball over. The Browns turned the ball over a ton too, but the last few weeks, outside of PJ Walker, they've been doing a good job of not turning that ball over offensively as well. So the turnovers, try to get them and limit yours, right? If you get some turnovers in this game, which I think is very possible, and limit your turnovers, then I think good things will happen. Now, here's some things that concern me about the Browns turning the football over in this game, and it's Joe Flacco and Aaron Donald, right? Because one of the issues with starting a quarterback who hasn't played much in the NFL this year, he hasn't played at all in the NFL this year. One of the issues you worry about with that kind of a situation, whether that player is old or young, is fumbles. Guys who have not been used to getting hit all year, when they first get hit, tend to fumble. That could be an issue for the Browns this week. We saw it with PJ Walker. He got used to not playing for a couple weeks, came back in there, fumbled the ball every time he got touched. This happens with guys who don't play that much, especially at the quarterback position. They get in there, they get hit, and the ball comes loose, right? So that's got to be a number one priority for Joe Flacco, getting rid of that football and making sure that you don't fumble the football. If you do that and then you get some turnovers on the defensive side of the ball, I think you'll be good. Defensively, you got to get pressure. Right. This is the what happened to you in Denver is the same exact thing that happened to you against Seattle, except for Denver is a little bit less capable than Seattle. And offensively, PJ was just not as good as he was against Seattle. Right. So you weren't ended up in a close game. But if DTR were healthy, it's very likely that you could either win that game or that game ends like Seattle. But it's the same problem on the defensive side of the ball. Just didn't have a great tackling game, and the defensive line just was very poor in that game. I thought Myles had a couple of moments in that game, but outside of that, he wasn't the usual Myles Garrett that we're expecting. But more concerning is that the other players outside of Myles Garrett, other than Obo Okoronkwo, did not step up whatsoever. Again, Okoronkwo stepped up, but you didn't see much from Zadarius Smith in that game last week. You didn't see much from Dalvin Tomlinson. You didn't see much from Maurice Hurst, Jordan Elliott. You name a guy, you didn't see much of them. So they have to be able to get pressure with that defensive line. If they don't, they're going to leave guys on islands. They're going to let Puka Nacua get time to get open. They're going to open gaps in the run game. You have to get pressure with the front four this week. If you do, you will be fine. You'll be able to be in a position to win this game, if not not dominate the game, but control the game. If you don't do that, then Matt Stafford's going to dice you up. They're going to be able to run the ball at will, and you're going to give up 200 yards to Puka Nacua. You got to get pressure this week if you're the defense. That's where this game's going to be won or lost, right? We know the offense isn't scoring 40 points this week. We know that this game's going to come down to a defensive effort, and the defensive effort's going to be won or lost on this team's ability to get pressure on the quarterback this week. If they can do it, they'll be fine. If they can't, they'll be in trouble all game. So pressure. That's the most important thing. Get some turnovers, get some pressure. Get those two things, you'll be in a position to win this game. I promise you. You don't get those two things, you won't. And we know this defense is capable of doing both of those things. I think offensively, the Browns will be able to move the ball. I don't know if they'll be able to finish drives. They struggled at doing that, but they'll be able to get field goals, right? I expect this to be a game that ends in the low 20s to high teens. So I think maybe 24 points is what you need to win this game. If you're either team, if you get to like 24 or 27, you feel really good about your chances to win this game. But it's about turnovers. It's about pressures this week. And it's about being able to play the cleaner game. This is what people refer to as a Tomlin game. And the reason they refer to it as a Tomlin game is because Mike Tomlin has made a habit of winning these games. And in these games, competency wins them. I say this all the time about the Pittsburgh Steelers. The reason Mike Tomlin has not gone under 500 is because at the end of the day, Mike Tomlin teams are competent. They aren't good all the time. They aren't super talented all the time, but they are competent, which means they don't make the big, massive mistake at the end of the game. The one thing to write home about with Kenny Pickett, he hasn't thrown an interception in almost a year. Right? They just don't make those big mistakes. And just not doing that and playing decent enough is enough to win you games in the National Football League. It's the same story this week. The team that will be closer to competence will win this game. If the Browns play a competent football game, don't shoot themselves in the foot, get field goals, a couple touchdowns, play a clean game, don't turn the ball over, they will win this football game. They should. If they allow the Rams to stay in it by missing on opportunities, by getting penalties on third down, by getting in their own way defensively and offensively, like they did against Seattle, like they did against the Denver Broncos last week, then they put themselves in a little bit of trouble. But that's going to be the story of the game this week. We know this is going to be a defensive-oriented game, and since we know that, we know where this battle is going to be won. It's going to be won on the line of scrimmage. It's all about the pressure this week. If you can create pressure, everything else will come. The turnovers will come. All the other stuff will come. The coverage stuff, all that will come. But you have to have a better game defensive line-wise than you did the week before. Consistent pressure on Matt Stafford. And you'll be able to walk out this game and call yourself a winner. If you don't get that consistent pressure, going to be in trouble. But this is what this game's going to come down to, in my opinion. You have to pressure Matt Stafford in order to win this game. And that's where I'm going to predict that this game kind of falls at, where it's like, hey, if the Browns get pressure, they will win. If they don't, they won't. This is where it's at for me. Let me know where it's at for you in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.